This is Talking the Devils, the Athletic show dedicated to Manchester United. Coming up, the season starts on Sunday. It's a big one to kick us off against Arsenal at Old Trafford. We'll preview that game. But what exactly will Manchester United look like after the summer transfers, some tactical tweaks and a cultural reset as well? There's a bit more transfer news coming. And now or never, that's the question, as Omar Berrada addressed staff at Carrington before the new season. We'll have all the details on that as well. I need to welcome you all, three smiling faces, Laurie Whitwell, Carl Anker, Andy Mitten, a full house to start the new campaign, just the way it should be, of course. How are we all doing, all right?
I'm fantastic. At least very hot.
Fantastic. Sure. Not as hot as yesterday. Very sweaty yesterday.
I can't believe we're doing this all over again. There was a moment I had last week where I was just sort of stood there with an ice cream going, oh, my summer's over. This is it.
No. It's,
no. No.
This is it. Just back on the treadmill. Let's do this.
Back with a vengeance. Andy, you're just used to it, aren't you, really? So I won't even ask you about the weather, to be honest. But in terms of the mood, the atmosphere around the training ground, Laurie, you've written a piece which has gone live on The Athletic on Thursday, all about this meeting that took place with staff at the training ground ahead of the new campaign. Omar Berrada spoke at it, Ruben Amorim spoke at it, and some of the biggest takeaways that you've found is that it feeds into this whole idea of trying to reset the club, trying to reset the atmosphere, the culture, the mood, and this new motto of badge, bravery, spirit. Tell us about it.
Yeah, well, it's just that really, that the executive want to, I think, mark the start of a new era in their eyes, because this is the first time that they've had a head coach in place that they've selected. The football structure is as they would have it. And so let's speak to staff, let's get face-to-face with them at a meeting at Carrington. It was on the indoor pitch of the Academy building, and let's introduce, shall we say, a motto. Omar Berrada said that he had kind of delved back into the club and what his principles should be, and came up with, I think with other people as well, badge, bravery, spirit, three words that he thinks people should work towards in their daily lives. So badge, i.e. no one's bigger than the badge. You should always respect the badge and play for the badge, work for the badge. Bravery, I think the idea there is that in difficult times, you've got to make brave decisions. You've got to show that courage. And then spirit, he sort of referenced Matt Busby and Jimmy Murphy as two pivotal figures in United's history, obviously after the Munich air disaster, who showed the spirit to rebuild the club. And if people can tap into that, obviously United will be in a good place. And so, yeah, it's kind of, you can perhaps call it a little bit gimmicky, but at the same time, I think it does crystallise minds for, this new era, shall we say. I mean, they certainly wanted to do that. I think the staff got a water bottle with the words on it to kind of remind you each day as you're sipping your water. Certainly a few of them I think will be used today because, as we've said, it is very hot. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a case of seeing the staff and getting their feedback as well. There was an opportunity for them to anonymously give their feedback on how they would meet these principles, shall we say. And there was, I think, majority was pretty positive. There was some, negative feedback in terms of, the move to Carrington for some staff. Does that cause some kind of divide with the staff that's still at Old Trafford? The kind of financial elements, obviously, of the Ineos regime. So I think that's always going to be simmering along, because clearly the approach that Sir Jim Ratcliffe has taken is a drastic one. It is cost cutting, and you're always going to have people, understandably, that will be pushing back against that. But I think it certainly marked a bit of a shift from the kind of meetings that they've been having since the round of redundancies was announced. Kind of pretty tense, pretty sullen, pretty tumultuous really for a long time. This felt like the majority of people were kind of on board with what was happening. I think it did help that you had Ruben Amorim there as well as the kind of figurehead of the club, certainly for the public point of view, speaking compellingly about, loving coming to work. He did sort of say last season he did dread it a little bit. Kind of that was what he told us actually as well in Chicago. The results I think played a big part of that, and the fact that he knew that United weren't going to be competing against certain teams, which obviously for some people would land a little bit awkwardly because their friends who loved coming to Carrington and Old Trafford have lost their jobs. But he did say how enthused he is about this season and coming into work now referenced the players staying behind, playing a game of snooker in his mind. Mark Armstrong, the chief business officer, had to correct him and say it was actually pool, and they need to sort of have a little bit of a discussion about the rules of the game. But either way, I think Amorim was basically saying the new setup that they've got at Carrington, the £50 million improvements that have been made, should make it more appealing for players to stay at the base and kind of get to know each other, have that bonding naturally with each other. So yeah, Jason Wilcox also spoke, but yeah, really fascinating meeting to kind of kick off the Premier League season. I think it's something that makes a lot of sense. If you're going on a new campaign, let people know what you've been up to in the summer, what your future holds, and get some feedback on it.
Yeah, and Mark shift was one of the phrases in that answer that Laurie gave Andy. Is that how it feels to you? Is that what it seems like from not just this meeting, but the general feel around the club?
Yeah, the mood's definitely a lot better. I've spoke to several people who were at that meeting. I think if you wind back to the first meeting where the Ineos people took charge, it was like, glory, Man United, we're going to make the club great again. And the staff were really infused by that. And then the second meeting was, there's going to be some big changes here and it's going to be difficult. People are going to lose their jobs. And the third meeting was like even worse. And I think you're coming out from that now into a much more optimistic place. I'll read some of the comments that I've got. It felt like the most football staff meeting that we've ever had. It was very positive. People told me that trust has been damaged in the last 12 months. People have seen colleagues lose their jobs. Some privileges have been taken away. You also need to remember that for a lot of people who work there, they're not Manchester United fans. It's the job, and it's a job that they do well. What else have I got? In some comments. I felt uplifted by the meeting, and I'm not always the most optimistic of people. I think Ruben Amorim being there was definitely seen as a positive, and he spoke in detail actually about Carrington, not just as a place, but of having control of Carrington again. I don't think that's always been the case. I think the players have had too much power in the past. So the negative comments were very few, is something which also tallies with what Laurie's just said. So I quite like the fact that they are communicating. You had a situation in previous meetings where the dissent was becoming audible. People were like, the trust had been really damaged. And I think when I spoke to Omar Berrada in June, the thrust of what he was saying was, yeah, it's been really difficult, but we're on the way out of that now. Not going to say that everything's going to be fine, but we are in a much better place strategically, financially. We're a much leaner operation. Maybe too lean. Manchester United are now offering job opportunities in lots of different areas, but I think positive would be the one word I would use to describe that meeting. And also it's on the cusp of pre-season. People have seen the new signings come in as well, so you're going to get that.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously we've seen the 1958 group decide not to go ahead with their planned protests before the Arsenal game because of the feedback that they've had from supporters. I mean, Carl, obviously the mood around the fans is optimistic with the new season starting, the new players on board as well. And the general feel of this meeting being positive feels like a good thing for United. They're in a brand new facility. They've worked on the culture around the team, around the club as well. There's unified messaging. These are all the types of things that we want. Obviously, ultimately, it's going to depend on what happens on Sunday and beyond. However, if you're beginning to get some of these things right, then the hope is that eventually does seep its way onto the field.
Absolutely. Hope, right? This sounds wonderful. This sounds very positive. It sounds very unified. You've absolutely teed me up to be the negative Nelly here, haven't you?
No, you can take it in whichever direction you like, Mr. Anker. You know that.
It sounds very tech startup. I'm sorry. This is just like loads of things in the back of my head are going, oh, okay. And The Athletic had one of these big meetings earlier this week, and we talked our version of what we're going to do for the season, and we talked about loads of positive
your
things
employers, remember.
that we're going to do. And okay, small annoyance. Why is it BBS? Shouldn't it should be triple B? Come on, like there should be another B word instead of spirit there. No, I'm having a laugh. this all sounds good. This all sounds promising. My worry, concern, the horrible nagging part of my head that kicks in when I've had 5 cups of coffee and I've been watching too much Y Scout is, this sounds familiar, right? The rebuild and the new team culture, and how actually the manager is the person who's in charge, and that the days of the toxic dressing room is going to be put away and the player power is not really there, and it's all about unification and things are going to be great. And I heard it under Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. I heard it under Erik ten Hag about how now it's about discipline. And I'm going, okay. But the thing I've had, and the thing that keeps me perhaps not as upbeat as other Man United fans I'm going across, is you've got to start winning games. And I'm still furious at how Manchester United played at the Europa League final. That taste is not left my mouth. Blah.
Don't do it to Andy, Carl. It'll spiral
Andy.
again.
I'm still there. And Arsenal, unfortunately, is not a good way to ease yourself into the season. If Manchester United beat Arsenal, and I'm hoping they do, it's rocket fuel and it goes and I'm sure we'll start having loads of conversations about whether or not Manchester United are back. If Manchester United don't beat Arsenal, then unfortunately, there. So,
well, I don't know.
They
can lose to Arsenal, can't they? I mean, that can happen, right? Well, yeah, they're going to be one of the best teams in the league again, aren't they? So I think you can have that sort of result. I think it's when it begins to get 2-3 matches down the line and they're still struggling that perhaps the mood then properly is then questioned. One thing for me, sorry, Carl, one thing for me about this time compared to previous times, I, from personal experience, have more faith in Ruben Amorim to change some of these things than I did with Erik ten Hag, mainly because of sort of speaking to people around the group who have got first-hand experience of dealing with these two individuals. Erik was very rules-led. He was very disciplined in the way that he did it. Punishments were handed down if you didn't stick to it, but he was very much stick to the rules. That was a messaging in the press conference. That was a messaging around the group as well. And okay, that is one way to get people on board and to get people all pushing in the same direction. But surely, ultimately, what you want is a load of people around you who want you to succeed. They want to succeed clearly for themselves, but they also want to succeed for you and to succeed for the wider group. And I just feel like the sort of greater emotional intelligence that Ruben has, that gives him a much better capability to be able to enact meaningful change in the culture and the mood around the team. That's only my personal opinion from what I've seen, but I do have more faith than before.
I totally agree with you there. I think Amorim, the way Amorim talked in his first press conference before Ipswich, and the way I think I said before, the way he explains players and how he explains his approach to training gave me reason to believe he understands the new Gen Z football player in a way that perhaps his predecessors didn't. When Amorim talks about how when you do your video sessions, you've got to keep it under 10 minutes, otherwise they just the minds go wandering. Compared to apparently Erik ten Hag was having meetings that would go nearly towards an hour. So little things like that where I'm going, okay, Amorim has a sense or an awareness of things in a way that perhaps Erik ten Hag doesn't have. I think the way Amorim's and the recruitment team have brought in new players suggests Amorim has a greater handle of what characteristics the squad lacks and how to fix that. This is me getting big lads, because I think Erik ten Hag lost sight of the need for physicality. So that's good. However, he did lose 17 matches last season. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And my reservation, hesitation, the thing I still can't let go of is that when a Man United fan tells me I trust Amorim or I trust Ineos or I trust that they got stuff right, my thing goes, why? Because they've not done anything yet for me to go, it's going to be better now. Because I'm just going, you lost 17 games, you lost to Tottenham Hotspur in a final.
Yeah, and the proof ultimately is on the pitch, isn't it? And I think they all know that, and that has to change, Laurie, doesn't it? Otherwise, the inside the meeting pieces will have a very different tone than this one again. Yeah,
I mean, I agree with a lot of what Carl said there, really, even the early answer, because it is all words at this moment, right? Like, you're not necessarily reinventing the wheel by coming out with a slogan. It's obviously, I think, it's sort of like a motivational tool, isn't it, to try and get people focused. But ultimately, And that synergy between the staff and the football department, as Andy touched on, is something that they want to tap into, with the staff coming across to Carrington. But that's going to be, that's going to lead to some issues, I think, as well. Which staff do make it across? How much mingling is there going to be between the football team and other staff? Is that actually optimal? I think
where do we all park?
Where do we all park is going to be a big one. That was an issue
big
certainly
concerns.
On the all staff meeting. Down the road, but we're gonna have to park down the road and walk up, aren't we?
Walk.
Someone please think of the journalists at press conference time. And so and to Carl's point, totally, it comes down to results. Like you look at these transfers that they've made, each one in their own right looks impressive, and the way they've kind of gone about it, you can understand the nuance to why they've agreed certain deals, but still they've spent a lot of money. 3 of the top 10 transfers of all time are now at United. Let's see how they all gel together. Let's see how they all do. It could be brilliant, and then you're thinking, fantastic, they do know what they're talking about, and away we go. If it doesn't work out, though, it's the now or never element to it is basically my impression from speaking to people of what Jim Ratcliffe is thinking in this, because you've spent a lot of money here. You can afford it at the time which we're talking about, because you're hoping to get sales in, but that's not a straightforward situation. The Rasmus Højlund one is certainly not a straightforward situation. Alejandro Garnacho likewise. So if these don't work out, you don't really have the funds to go and make another splash again. There are similarities with Ten Hag's first summer, when he lost 2 games and they had to splurge 150 million quid on Casemiro and Antony. I think it's a bit different this time, because that was at the end of the window where they obviously massively overpaid for Antony, whereas each one of these, is a pretty much, Sesko certainly is a long-term target, and they've kind of got I would say what feels like an understandable fee for him. But let's see when the results, start coming in, and when the performances are being seen for all of us to observe. So yeah, it's a balance right now. I think it feels positive, certainly, or quite a lot of people do, but there is still, I don't want to dismiss the people that are negative about this, because, or at least feel there's still some bruising there from the way that Ineos went about cutting people's jobs and removing certain perks, shall we say, or just changing the whole working dynamic. It's still an interesting place to go to work. So yeah, let's see as the weeks go on.
Andy, people listening to this podcast will have no idea of the different facial expressions you've been making across our last 3 answers. People watching on YouTube might not even get that insight, depending on how exactly this is put together. But you made a lot of different faces throughout those 3 answers. Please explain what was going on in your mind.
The mood is very good, very good. For the reasons that we've spoken about,
the messaging that's coming out, the theme of the cultural reset. I mean,
it's good, and Carl's right. We have heard this before. I've heard it from Ollie Solskjaer and from Ed Woodward, but I feel it is deeper than those previous resets for many reasons. I also think it's more tangible. It's not just talking about a lick of paint at Carrington. A lot of money has gone into it. So if you're working there, you're going to see that. And I also feel that Ruben Amorim has gone really deep in terms of his own reset, in terms of getting almost complete control of the players at Carrington, and other players grappled with that. And it's interesting, one of my facial expressions maybe have been about Erik ten Hag's meetings lasting so long. Well, Louis van Gaal had meetings about the meetings, and that really annoyed some players.
Still scarred people, I think. Yeah.
One player who's sensible and really well respected, he got admonished for turning up like 32 seconds late. And he's just like, I can't work here anymore. I'm going to leave. And he left. He just said, I cannot work under this environment. And when tickings offs are being given out, there's also ways of doing that as well, because these players are young lads. They're going to make mistakes. I've done a piece for The Athletic this week about Lenny Yoro, and he's actually, the club are really, really happy with Lenny Yoro, but they are young lads. Things are going to go wrong. And if you tell them off in the right way, then they're much like, yeah, you've got a point there. Rather than, okay, you are 32 seconds late, that's £1,800 will be deducted from your wage. There's ways of doing it.
Absolutely. And he's right. I got a ticker on my laptop, and before every new season, it just has a little reminder. An 18-year-old was born in this year. So I always keep that in mind for when I'm interviewing these players or when I'm trying to write, going, okay, maybe I should relax references to football events that happened in 1998 because your average 18-year-old has no idea of what's going on. Manchester United just did a little video piece about the third
Floppy
kit
discs
where they showed...
That's a great idea.
Do you remember this thing about the 90s to a bunch of United players and two or three of them didn't understand what Blockbusters is?
Harry Maguire got every single one, didn't he?
Of course
he did. Grounded
Good lad.
You can
Good
laugh
Yorkie
and
lad.
joke about that, but Andy's totally correct. You know, that an 18-year-old in 2025 is very different to an 18-year-old that you were talking to in 2012, which is very different to what you were talking to 2004. And that's all good, really positive. And I really hope this is the last time for a very long time we're talking about a Manchester United head coach or manager having a big meeting and talking about it's a cultural reset, it's a standards reset, because I do want Amorim to be a success, and I think that's what a lot of United fans talk about when they say they've earned my trust and this is all going to go well, because you want them to go well, because you don't. The alternative is just annoying now, isn't it?
Yeah, and another season of those podcasts. No, thank you. Let's try and make it something different. Let's dig a bit deeper then into the optimism, specifically the stuff that we're seeing on the pitch in pre-season that we hope will be taken into the new campaign. Right, well, the Athletic have done a hope-ometer. It's becoming a sort of a traditional curtain raiser article from our establishment, and Manchester United rank a lot better than normal, actually, to be fair. I think it's better than normal. It's certainly better than it would have been if you did this at the end of last season. The fifth. So the Manchester United fans are the fifth most hopeful set of supporters in the Premier League. Only Sunderland, Brighton, Liverpool and Chelsea ranked higher than the Manchester United fans, who were 86% optimistic about the new campaign.
Do you think Brighton and Man United might switch places if a certain transfer happens?
Yeah, the believers might cross from one to the other. That could well happen, yeah. And the percentage rises. We'll see what happens with that. We'll talk about that in a moment as well. But from what you've seen, Carl, in pre-season, from what you, Andy, and Laurie have seen in pre-season in America, I mean, tactically, how much better, Carl, I'll come to you first on this, how much better does it look? A lot? A little? Are there specific details which fans will be seeing on Sunday for the first time and being surprised about? What do you think?
I think the optimism comes about from the fact that Amorim is going to have a brand new front three. And instead of attacking moves fizzling out because you've got Garnacho not getting his head up and just opting to cut inside and shoot and ignoring a player, you've got Cunha in that position. You've got Brian and Mbeumo, who can do a myriad of things on that right-sided 10 and has the left foot that Amorim has spoken about a lot. And you've got Sesko, hopefully, maybe. We still don't know about his match fitness and match sharpness, who has superior hold-up play to Rasmus Højlund. And I think that's the optimism. It's not necessarily... I haven't seen too many new tactical wrinkles across pre-season compared to the end of last season. But what I have seen is a collection of players who are better equipped for it.
Yeah.
Cunha's
to carry out the instructions that you think he's been given the whole time that have either not been listened to or not been able to be recreated by the players in game.
I think one thing that has stuck out to me a lot across pre-season is Dorgu, and how Dorgu is looking better because Cunha is there, and Cunha is getting his head up. Cunha is really appreciating those overlapping runs that Dorgu is making, and he's also giving the ball to Dorgu in the final third when that run is made, where that wasn't necessarily the case on the previous players who played as the left-sided 10. Dorgu looks better because you've got a better player ahead of him, and I think that might be more of the things you're going to see in these early weeks of 2 or 3 players last season. You're like, they look out of it, but they're going to be helped by this. I think it's been quite interesting how Amorim across pre-season has essentially paired up his central midfield. So it's Fernandes and Casemiro and Ugarte and Mainu. And there's not been too much interchange between that 4. It's those 2 or those 2. So that's been interesting.
Why do you think that is? Do you know yet?
I think you've got... Well, I've written it one's your experienced pair and one's your one with legs, as it is. I think Fernandes and Casemiro is probably the pairing you're going to see more of. And then when you do see Mainu and Ugarte play together, it's going to be more of a impetus or responsibility on Mainu to be the ball progressor and to play the role of Bruno Fernandes if he plays in that way. Does that make sense? Sort of.
Yeah.
Mainu being Fernandes' understudy, so to speak.
He's more the 8 than the 6 in that system. Yeah.
I think that might happen. Laurie and Andy, you're in America, so you watched a lot more of these games live compared to me. So what have you seen anything else that?
Yeah, I think that United's aggression certainly against West Ham was a big thing, because that's ultimately what I think they were really suffering from last season, that ability, that physicality, that capacity to keep going, pressing high, nicking the ball, having that anticipation. That was a crucial thing that Amorim said to us in the interview in Chicago, that being faster isn't necessarily about the athletic ability, but also about the understanding with your teammate and having that instant recognition and trust that you can go and search for that ball, like Mainu did, for example, against West Ham for the Bruno goal. And so that's a key thing. If they can maintain that, I think obviously, in the matches subsequent to that, perhaps it's not been quite as good. Certainly Everton exposed United a little bit for the second balls, the long balls. So I think that's something to consider. What I did really like, though, since he's come into the team, is Mbeumo on that right side, sort of coming in, and he's just got such a sharp first touch, and then the pass inside to a Bruno or even an Ahmad, if he's doing an underlapping run, to kind of open up the pitch. It's weird that even though you're kind of coming into the pitch, it feels like it then unlocks a certain way that you can attack. And then having
the
Ahmad
wrong-footed players on the wrong side from this pre-season, to me, and I'm sure you saw more of it than I did, like we've said, but that made more sense than at times last year, where Dorgu in particular obviously played on the left-hand side in pre-season, but when he first came to United, he was used on the right, and everyone was like, why is he using him on the right? Even though he'd actually played more there for Atalanta. That's a different detail. For Lecce, sorry, not Atalanta. But actually watching the wing-backs in particular, I think it was the Everton game, Dalot on the left and Ahmad on the right, them playing with Cunha and Mbeumo made far more sense.
Because Mbeumo and Cunha are dynamic players, aren't they? So that they can run with the ball, they can move into those areas, whereas it felt Bruno's fantastic in that role, but maybe more central. It doesn't necessarily dovetail that well with a wing back that maybe wants to come inside a little bit. It is going to be interesting watching Ahmad's progression, because obviously I still think he does his best work in that kind of number 10 role, but clearly he's been earmarked for a wing back position, which is interesting with Dalot. But then again, maybe he does go over to the left hand side. Amorim has spoke so many times about having left footed players in his team, so you can see that we've, United have got an abundance really now. I think maybe even going to get more. But so yeah, I think they were the kind of standout sort of details for me anyway.
I thought he was hit and miss pre-season, but then maybe that's what pre-season is for. You don't just expect them to be brilliant right from the start. I thought the Leeds game was looking like a lot of the bad stuff we saw last season. I thought United were excellent in New Jersey in the first half against West Ham. Even better against Bournemouth. You could see the training. You could see they were pressing. You could physically, I think they look stronger. I think they look fitter. And also when you speak to the players and they're telling you good things, you start to believe into it as well. Right to pick out Dorgu, who's exceptional against Bournemouth. And this is a Bournemouth team who got the better of Manchester United last season. This is an Everton team who got the better of Manchester United last season. West Ham beat Manchester United twice last season. And suddenly you're listening to Bournemouth's manager describing Manchester United as being an exceptional side. And you're like, really? Oh, does someone actually think that? Because it's only pre-season and you've just finished 15th. To be fair to Højlund, I thought he showed some glimpses of positivity, especially in Chicago. That was also the place where he probably realised that he's not going to have the future he would hope for at Manchester United. Mason Mount did well. I think with Cunha and Mbeumo, lovely interchanges, some really encouraging, but you need goals and assists as well. And the Everton game worried me a little bit in Atlanta because, as you said, the Everton's midfield cut through Manchester United. So I'm prepared that And the Fiorentina game as well. You know, that goal was a really bad one to concede early on.
Set piece defending is something I'm a little bit concerned about.
Yeah, so I've got worries, and I don't just think it's just going to click and everything's going to be fine. But also, if you speak to other fans, they've got more worries. And remember, Laurie and I came through Atlanta Airport, busiest in the world, by the way, and we met some Evertonians, Scousers, and they're like, "He's going to beat us again." I'm like, "Again?"
What was that accent, Andy? Your American sounds Australian, and your
that was a good Scouse accent.
I don't know what that was.
He's going to beat us again. That's all right for Scouse.
Yeah, that's not bad.
And I'm like, you were miles better than Manchester United last season in the game at Goodison, if not at Old Trafford, the turning point Laurie spoke about.
Fair.
So I think that there's still a good way to go, and there's a really tough start to the season. We're speaking now on the cusp of this wave. Arsenal are a really good team. I think you've got key markers everywhere. Fulham away, Burnley at home, and then Manchester City and Chelsea are going to be really, really tough matches. So I am genuinely more optimistic than I have been for a few years, but there's buts all over the shop.
And none of them are Nicky. I think that's the phrase I always use when you say that particular thing, Andy. Just before we move it on, Ankit in San Francisco has a question. It's a burning question. Lots of people will be wondering exactly the same, not least Carl Anker, because it's one of his favourite points to make on the podcast as well. But Ankit says, I've just ordered the third kit. Somehow I'm in believe mode. So the main question is it time to bring back the Andy Mitten standard of quality for this season? Surely with the spend, top 4, top 5 maybe these days, and a trophy can still be the only real definition of success. He's nodding.
I'm nodding, but I'll downplay it a little bit. I think United need to finish high enough in the league table to play European football next year. You know, top 4, I love the idea of top 4. If it clicks, absolutely. But to go from 15th to 4th is a massive jump. And look at the opponents. Chelsea are world champions. Manchester City are going to be vengeful. Liverpool may have won the league last year. I didn't quite catch whether they did or not. Arsenal have been consistent at not winning trophies, but they've been really high up in the league table. And then you've got the rest, you know. Brighton are a cracking side. So I would say top 6th, and I'm almost doubting myself as I'm saying it because Manchester United shouldn't be aiming for 6. And a trophy would be absolutely lovely, but it's knockout football. I'd have less confidence about winning the League Cup or FA Cup than I would have done the Europa League last year. But European football
top 5 and a trophy. Should we amend it now that
I'd take top 5 and a trophy all day long.
Champions League.
You'll take it, but do you believe it's going to happen?
No, that's why. If you're asking me for my prediction, I'm saying 6.
Okay, sorry. It's in the running order for later on in the show. I must crack the whip. Let's talk transfers. Okay, a few different aspects to the transfer titillation this week. Carlos Baleba is still the name on Manchester United lips. There's hashtags going around. There's all sorts of different slogans and lyrics to said songs for this young Brighton midfielder. Laurie, do you have any update on the situation and Manchester United's interest in him?
Yes, since we last did the podcast, or did we do this on the last podcast?
You say it and I'll tell you. And a lot of other people will in the comments, I imagine.
I mean, talks are continuing. There's obviously intermediaries that are working on behalf of United, I think the player as well, to see whether Brighton would be open to this. Now, Brighton are saying he's not for sale, and there is quite a bit of scepticism at United as to whether this can actually be achieved. But still, it's not been totally shut down. So that is leading me to believe that you never know. And okay, I'm probably in the camp of it's unlikely, but you never know. There's kind of ways that this can be sorted, agreed. I think a crucial point is the player. He obviously is keen on a move to Old Trafford. He has been contacted by players at United to explain what the landscape is at the club. And as we've spoke about already, I think the players, the squad are pretty pleased with what the environment has been like under Ruben Amorim. So he's been getting positive reports. So it's now maybe how much does he really want it? Does he push for it? We've seen that with United, Brian Mbeumo. He obviously went back into Brentford and told them categorically he wanted to join United. So that brought them back to the negotiating table. We've seen it in other instances at different moments. Clearly, finances is the big one, right? Like, okay, Brighton say he's not for sale, but he will leave at some point. It's just that they've got him on a contract to 2028 plus one. He's locked in. But yeah, I think there's a number that would get it sorted. Now, what is that number? That's what these conversations, shall we say, are trying to work towards. I think United will only make a bid if they feel it'll be successful, like they did with Benjamin Sesko. And so, yeah, let's see how it develops. I mean, he's getting all kinds of different prices out. Your Moises Caicedo being one reference point, 100-odd million. That was 2 years ago. It was a very specific circumstance with Chelsea, but people do regard Baleba as in that same kind of category. Perhaps another point to observe is João Pedro going to Chelsea this summer for 55, right into 60 million. He's a striker, 23-year-old. So that's a healthy kind of fee. United have been looking at the £70 million range, haven't they, for their signing so far? Let's see what happens. I think there's a few different factors in this, but at the moment, there's scepticism abound at United about whether this can happen. But I certainly think Ruben Amorim would like to have him on board.
Andy?
Yeah, he absolutely would. Manchester United want the player. I'm not going to vary too much from what I said in the last podcast because I stand by that. The player would like to join Manchester United. Manchester United would absolutely like to sign him. What I've done since then is speak to people in professional football about the player because I don't know that much about him. My word, rave reviews, honestly. Absolute, just really, really good reviews. I think it's all about the finances and Brighton are under no pressure to sell. They can be as difficult, as awkward as they want to be. We talk about naming a price. What if Brighton don't name the price? What if they just let the time tick down and mess about and procrastinate? And it's a difficult one. And the only way you can break through all that is by paying the sort of money, which I think would be considered stupid, just to... if you're making the world's most expensive player, then Brighton, yep, okay, here's your player. I've got no evidence at all that Manchester United have got any intention of doing that, but I don't think there's been that much movement to lead towards a breakthrough. And back to Laurie's point, does the player agitate to move? And there are comparisons with Brian Mbeumo at Brentford. So I think it's a difficult one. But if you're playing for Brighton and Manchester United absolutely want to sign you, and you can play for one of the biggest clubs in the world and you can play in front of 73,000 every week and you can be part, hopefully, of a rebirth of one of the greatest clubs in world football, as opposed to going out and having your chips nicked by a seagull in Hove. Oh my God. It's pretty attractive, isn't it?
They need to send you down there, Andy. Agent Andy.
I'd go down there, no problem.
Carl?
No, totally agree. Totally agree with everything Laurie and Andy have said. I think Laurie's bang on the money, or very good at identifying how much money it might take, considering the fee Caicedo went for. I think another thing that's interesting here is Brighton don't tend to sell these sorts of players unless they've got their replacement already through the door. So Basuma was allowed to go to Tottenham Hotspur because Caicedo was already at Brighton. Caicedo was allowed to go to Chelsea after some interest from Liverpool, after Baleba was there or thereabouts on their radar. And I suspect Brighton's 2.5 million Caicedo Baleba replacement perhaps isn't quite ready yet. Because also when Brighton get these players in, they do send them out on loan,
Yeah.
Caicedo went out on loan before, and Baleba has also taken a little bit of time to adjust. So I think whatever plan Tony Bloom has he might not appreciate it being disrupted by this conversation with Manchester United, and therefore it might create the situation that Andy's talked about, where Brighton don't necessarily set a price. What was the words Edwin van der Sar told you in Amsterdam for Anthony, Laurie?
Oh, well,
challenged.
They
challenged Manchester United to go as high as they could go.
Ajax did set a price there. It was 100 million euros, and United met it. But yeah, I don't think they've set a price, Brighton, for Baleba, and that's part of the issue. And I used to watch Tony Bloom on Late Night Poker like 20 years ago, and he was great at kind of keeping his cards close to his chest, all that kind of stuff. So I'm sure that's factoring into this current negotiation.
I think this is. There has been a lot of chat and a lot of hashtags and a lot of questions from United fans about a player United haven't put a formal bid in for yet. At least to my knowledge.
Songs have been written, Carl.
Right? So
chants have been scripted.
Absolutely. Got the rave reviews. I wrote about Baleba earlier this summer when I did my shopping for Amorim list, and I said he was the Premier League darling. I also included a bunch of other midfielders in there who were slightly cheaper. One of them got nicked by the aggregators, and they said United were closing in on a deal. Such is the way of this transfer world. So the Amorim wants Baleba, and it looks as if this transfer window, when United have a number one target, they don't necessarily do the pivot away and get someone cheaper at this point in time. So we'll see. Look, it's mid-August, and the window shuts towards September time. So
yeah. A couple of other bits to tidy up from this week, Laurie, as well, if you don't mind. Toby Collyer going out on loan. Is that a signifier of anything moving in the midfield area, or do you think that would happen no matter what the next couple of weeks holds?
I think that would probably happen whatever regardless. We spoke to him in Chicago, and his view was, I want to play for Manchester United. Now, is that staying around now and trying to get my way into the team, or is that going on loan, building myself up even more, making myself an even more sort of irresistible prospect for Amorim to pick in his side? And so the loan it always felt like that was going to happen. So season-long loan, development. It's not like he's got an obligation or an option to buy. So it's West Bromwich Albion that he's going to. There was a host of Championship clubs in for him, the likes of Leicester, Southampton, Hull, I'm told. So, a lot of clubs were looking at him, and ultimately he's chosen West Brom. I think, under Ryan Mason, you've got a guy there that's going out on his own, isn't he, for the first time after working at Tottenham for so long, and perhaps brings that sort of freshness to the situation. West Brom will be targeting promotion, so looks like a good fit for him. I think he's a really talented player, got a lot of energy, and that's the thing. You sort of think, okay, he's one of the players with the energy that kind of can play in the Amorim way, but he obviously is still developing and learning, so I can understand why they've decided to allow him out on loan. They want him to get minutes, right? And so United have still got, particularly with, Bruno Fernandes now, you think dropping back, Casemiro, Kobbie Mainoo, Manuel Ugarte, they've got quite a few players for those two sort of 6 or 8 roles. So I think that was kind of the idea there with him going out on loan.
Okay, and last point, Gianluigi Donnarumma, if we can. We spoke very briefly about him at the very end of the last episode of Talk of the Devils, but in your transfer roundup, the deal sheet on Tuesday, it felt like there's much more distance, despite that beautifully written note to PSG fans ahead of the Super Cup, where he was left out of the squad completely, and it looks like he's got no future now in Paris. Yeah,
it's crazy how that's happened, right? I mean, I watched the Super Cup last night, and Lucas Chevalier, his replacement that PSG signed from Lille, sort of did the business, I suppose, a little bit in the penalty shootout, although he didn't look totally comfortable throughout the game. So really fascinating.
Certainly not for Romero's goal, no.
Yeah, very bad, wasn't it? Sort of palmed it into the back of his net, but interesting one. So, I think Donnarumma is clearly a massively talented goalkeeper, but my information is that United won't be pursuing that. Andre Onana is their goalkeeper. Clearly there's some discussion around whether he's going to remain the goalkeeper sort of long term, but at the moment it doesn't look like he's leaving, so that kind of puts the block on them signing a goalkeeper, putting money down to get a player in. Onana, from what I'm told, is hoping to be fit for the Arsenal game, which is going to be interesting if he goes straight into the team, having not had a pre-season, but let's see on that one. But yeah, Donnarumma, I don't think United are pursuing.
Okay, let's talk Arsenal. It's on Sunday. It's coming now. We're just a few days away. It's a hotly anticipated start, Carl. It's your favourite Premier League fixture. And actually, I saw Peter Schmeichel at the training ground the other day, and he said as well that it's his favourite Premier League fixture, given obviously the history between the two clubs when he was playing between the sticks for Manchester United. But it's certainly a tough start, isn't it?
Absolutely. No hiding in this one. Arsenal have made some really impressive moves in the transfer market. I think Zubimendi is a brilliant football player. Broke English hearts at Euro 2024 in the final after Rodri went off. I think his partnership with Declan Rice is going to be quite tasty, not just on Sunday, but also as the league progresses. I think Madueke, I know Arsenal fans weren't too keen on his signing, but I think he's a quite special football player, although, maybe he needs to pay attention to what he's doing on Instagram so he doesn't get in trouble anymore. And Viktor Gyokeres, who we spoke about all summer as well. We know how good he is, so I'm not going to talk about him anymore. So they bought well, but so have United. This one's going to look tasty. I think, unfortunately, set pieces is going to be one. I'm going to be a bit worried on set pieces because United's defending against Fiorentina wasn't great. And I am going to be very interested, I should say, on what you brought up earlier about the underlapping runs that United have been playing recently. I think that will be a really, really good way of trying to attack those half spaces, particularly at left back for Arsenal. They're massively rotating left back situation. I think there's just a little bit of
opportunity
space that Mbeumo and I've done Mbeumo, haven't I? Mbeumo and others can access.
Yeah, I had it from the horse's mouth the other day. Unquestionably now committed to his name being Brian Mbeumo. So there's no doubt on that one moving forward, despite the fact that he has pronounced it differently in the past. But Mbeumo definitely sounds like a proper surname, doesn't it? So let's hope there's more boom than in his game for Manchester United.
Very good.
Thank you. I pre-planned that one. In terms of Old Trafford, though, Andy, it's got to be rocking on it on Sunday. First game of the season's always like that anyway, but this game, having to watch nearly everyone else play before United kick off at 4:30 UK time as well, just adds that bit extra, doesn't it? It's going to be well red hot, isn't it?
Yeah, the weather, but also the atmosphere. I think it will be. And go to that Arsenal at home 89, it was absolutely bouncing, and Manchester United won 4-1. I would accept 3-1 on Sunday, if I'm honest. Doesn't have to be 4-1.
Would 2-1 interest you?
I'd take 2-1.
Yeah.
Might even take 1-1. Yeah.
Steady on.
It's not just about the game. It's people seeing each other after the summer, the sense of community, which is really important. When you go to Old Trafford and 73,000 people will do that. I'm looking forward to it, to seeing everyone, to the smells, the sounds outside the ground. The atmosphere does need to be good. I do think it will be. There's been quite a lot of talk this week about what songs should be played, what songs shouldn't be played. And I think almost as important is it's got to stay good. It's no good first 10 minutes being really loud and then say if Arsenal were to go ahead, just go, oh no, there's got to be a bit of staying power from the fans. And maybe even Arsenal at home last season was quite a surprise result because Manchester United didn't lose that. I think Bruno Fernandes got the goal in that one. It's something to absolutely look forward to. It's a very, very tough opening game at Old Trafford. I am worried about how competent Arsenal's midfield is. I've watched Zubimendi for a long time. Declan Rice was someone who many people at Manchester United felt should have signed. Odegaard is also an exceptional player. And the league table hasn't lied in the last couple of years. Arsenal are really good. And how did they go on in the FA Cup last year? They didn't win it, did they? No. Bring it on. I think United fans need to see something tangible where they come out of the ground and go and don't say it's the same as last season. That's
definitely. I think the team need that. They had so many. They've probably still got so many scars from some of the performances and disappointing results at Old Trafford specifically that they need to really start off in a positive way this time around. Even from the first move in the game, I know that there's a big focus on that around the team at the minute as well to set off on the right foot. So you hope that obviously begins from that first whistle on Sunday against Arsenal and the season can really get lift off with all the talk off the pitch and so on. Just so we've been speaking about the side, actually, you mentioned midfield a moment ago. We want to send our best wishes to Sekou Kone, who suffered a pretty nasty-looking head injury in a game at Tamworth in the National League Cup last night. The match was abandoned in the first half. And did you have a bit of information on how he is? I'm sure people will be concerned.
I spoke to some people who were there. I wasn't, gutted actually, because I really wanted to go to Tamworth. Someone said it was really scary last night. I think the club is still waiting on what the damage is, but I think fundamentally he should be okay, which is a relief. We don't know whether anything's been fractured or damaged yet, but he was conscious and he was responsive. because he'd gone out like a light. I think the main thing is absolute caution around head and brain injuries, because they're always a big concern. So I maybe be more positive than people who were watching the images last night from Tamworth. So as you said, Ian, wish him well, because he's got a really bright future. And unfortunately, it is a risk of sport, not just professional sport. These things can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Best wishes to him. Laurie, who's going to start on Sunday?
What, the full 11?
Please.
I get the sense that Onana will start, actually.
Okay.
Yoro, De Ligt or Maguire? Probably De Ligt. Probably Luke Shaw. Ahmad.
Wow.
Bruno.
This is tricky, isn't it?
Casemiro, Dorgu, Cunha and Bumo. Does he start Sesko straight away? He played in a game against the 21s on Sunday, actually, Sesko. So he has played for United in a way already. Does he start him? I think he might start him. So let's go Sesko.
Okay. Yeah. Any arguments on any of those points, Carl?
Yeah. Well, was Laurie predicting his 11, or is he predicting what Amorim's going to do?
I was predicting what Amorim might do, but I am speculating there.
I think Amorim may swap De Ligt for Maguire as the middle centre-back. I know you, in your brilliant piece about pre-season, you outlined the fact that Maguire and De Ligt have been doing training drills both as the middle centre-back. But I think Maguire just has the nudge because he's a better ball carrier and he's a little bit more ambitious with passing the ball. And we've seen throughout in many games, the middle centre-back has to push into midfield under Amorim. So I think Maguire might win that battle. I suspect Amorim's going to play Dalot over Ahmad at right wing back because it's Arsenal, not necessarily because he thinks it's a better team. I think you want a little bit more defensive solidity and aggression against a team as strong as Arsenal. So I think Diogo is going to get the nod ahead of Ahmad there. But you said Luke Shaw, left-sided centre-back there, didn't you, as well? Yeah, go on. Why not? Yeah. So those are my counter offers there. So Maguire over De Ligt, Dalot over Ahmad.
Interesting chat, isn't it? Because we just don't know. There's so many questions. Does he bring Onana straight in? Sesko would be really bold, but if he started, people would be so up for that.
Something to get behind, isn't it? Definitely.
It totally is.
Yeah.
Doesn't always work. I remember one opening game at Old Trafford, I think against Birmingham years ago, and I think they started a young striker, may have been Fraser Campbell, and it just didn't quite work for him. But Benjamin Sesko is completely different in terms of profile and expectation there. Defence really interesting. I spoke to Maguire and De Ligt pre-season. They both really like each other. It's 50-50. I don't know where it's going to go with that one. Luke Shaw, a fit and functioning Luke Shaw is a fantastic player. Love to see that happen again. And Lenny Yoro is, I've written a piece for The Athletic this week about how I think he will be Manchester United's breakthrough star. I did a lot of research into him this week and spoke to various people, and the assessments were absolutely glowing. That said, he's still a teenager, but he has bulked up. That's all in my piece. He's been on a specific nutrition and strength and conditioning diet, and I think he looked it. So when you consider how turbulent Manchester United was, the club that he arrived into for many reasons, I think he's got to be considered a success so far. I think he can progress towards being one of the best defenders in the world. I think he's that good.
Carl, the fans down under will be excited to see Sesko up front, won't they?
Yes, Sesko definitely has hops and he can be rather skippy.
Boomerang Benji. He just had his squad number announced, so he'll be wearing number 30 for United this season as well. Diego Leon didn't last long in that number, did he?
No, he did not. Bless him. Andy's piece is really good. I would recommend anyone listening to check it out. There's a really good section in there about how Euro bounced back after his difficult game against Sulemana against Southampton in the 3-1 game where Ahmad scored the hat-trick. I think that was a real sort of introduction to how tricky the Premier League can be, because even a team like Southampton, which nearly recorded the record's lowest points, had a winger that was as direct and dangerous. But Euro since developed and kicked on there. I think on Sunday, Amorim's likely to use 5 subs. He's spoken about how Cunha and Mbeumo are 60 to 70% match fit there. Sesko played 1 preseason game for RB Leipzig, but he didn't play the most recent 2 there. So I think the 2 or 3 players that are between, not quite 85% plus in terms of match sharpness, and therefore you'll see some half-time 60-minute changes. So I haven't put Ahmad in my starting 11. I think Ahmad will likely emerge at some point in the game, as might Mason Mount, because we've already spoken before about Mount's ability off the ball and how he can contribute to a press. So I wouldn't be surprised if Ahmad and Mount both emerge in the second half of that game.
Yeah, there'll be a lot of interest all of a sudden in United in Slovenia as well, won't they? Benjamin Sesko will be the first Slovenian ever to play for United when he does pull on that number 30 shirt. I don't think United have ever even faced a Slovenian side before, so it's a new area to find an interest in Old Trafford. I'm imagining, knowing you, Andy, there will be some Slovenian link that you've previously found to the club.
I'd be there this morning if Manchester United wouldn't have lost against Tottenham, because it's right next to Udine where the Super Club was played.
There we go.
So I would have gone there, and then I would have gone into Slovenia to do a backgrounder on Sesko. But obviously, I'm not going to talk about Bilbao one more time. But
have you ever been to Slovenia before?
Yeah, and it's Man United related.
Obviously.
So 1999 pre-season, Man United are in Australia, and I travel through Indonesia to get there, and I'm on like a rickety old bus, and as well as meeting 3 girls from Salford who were far too smart for me, I get talking to this couple. I was with my mate, and they say, Manchester, one of our neighbours, he used to play for Manchester United, and they were from Slovenia. And I'm like, yeah, and what's his name? Nikola Jovanovic. I'm like, he's Manchester United's first ever player from outside the UK and Republic of Ireland. And he was like the Holy Grail. No one had ever managed to interview him, and still hasn't to this day. And he came from Red Star Belgrade. So I'm like, really? He's one of your neighbours? Yeah. And I kept in touch with him on email. And they say, yeah, we've spoken to Nikolai about you. He's happy to meet you. So I'm like, praying that Manchester United draw someone in the Champions League that's close to Slovenia. And they drew Zagreb, which was rough as you like, by the way. Proper scary, really scary. So me and the same mate, we flew into Italy to Ancona, and we took a train up to Slovenia, to Ljubljana, the capital, which was really beautiful. It looks like Prague. And then we met Nikolai. He was coaching the team there. I think they're called Olympia. And he was really friendly with us. He couldn't speak any English, so we sort of got through. My Slovenian ain't great either, but I basically got the only interview with Nikolai Jovanovic, and to this day, I've never seen another interview with him. And he's Montenegrin, he's not Slovenian. But yeah, I've been there. But hopefully Sesko can become the most famous Slovenian. I think the first lady of the United States is from Slovenia, Melania. She's originally from there. But yeah, it's a beautiful part of the world. They're into like, it's quite mountainous, so they've got good ski jumpers and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it's the top part of the world.
I actually interviewed a Slovenian footballer earlier on this summer, Jakub, who's just signed for Leeds, centre-back. So imagine the United-Leeds match being a big point of interest in Slovenia in a few weeks' time. Only issue was all the questions I asked him were in English and all his answers were in Slovenian, so I had absolutely no idea what he said about Benjamin Sesko, who hadn't signed for United at that point either. But yeah, right, let's round this off because we've done pretty much an hour. It's a question I asked at the start of last season. It's a question that everyone got spectacularly wrong. And this is really teeing up similar to happen again, to be honest. But to finish us off, Laurie, where will Manchester United finish in the Premier League this season? Good luck.
Could be anything, couldn't it, really? Let's go.
No, just 1 to 20. The possibilities aren't endless.
I think 7th.
Yeah?
Let's go 7th.
Why 7th?
Oh, don't ask me for why. I don't know.
Sorry.
Anything could happen. I know you're saying it's 1 to 20.
Are there 6 better sides?
Well, I don't know. There were 14 better sides last season and nobody knew. But yeah, I kind of think they'll be better than last season, but not enough to break into the Champions League places.
Okay, there we go. Carl Andy wants to go next.
Yeah,
Silence.
I've not put this out on social media, but I'm similarly a little bit more downbeat. So I'm going to say 8th. In that I think United have improved, and that front three is really good, but there is just a weakness in central midfield that hopefully I can revise this in a little bit if a certain someone from Brighton arrives. But I think that weakness makes you a critical target compared to a number of clubs in the top 5 right now. So I'm going to say 8th. Anything higher than 8th, I'll be chuffed to bits. But yeah, tricky.
I'm going to say 6th, and maybe I'll give a different answer at the end of the transfer window. I think 6 is what Manchester United should be. Can't say aiming for 6 because it sounds pathetic, but I think it's realistic. And a couple of good cup runs, maybe even a trophy, would really lift those long weeks between games, because there's very few games this season compared to recent seasons. But if there's big engagement and cup runs, then I think the season could be much more tolerable. But Manchester United, it sounds really basic, this, need to score a lot more goals and need to win a lot more games.
Yeah, and this is the advantage of being the host. I can now say, well, thank you so much, all three of you, for your predictions.
No. Go on, what do you think?
I saw Wayne Rooney say that Manchester United have the opportunity / ability to finish 5th, and I don't disagree with that too strongly. That feels like me getting hugely carried away before I've seen a ball kicked this season. But when you look at the teams who finished above United, there's a few sides that I can definitely see them finishing above. And then there's a collection of teams like Aston Villa, like Newcastle, who I think United, without any European football, do have a big advantage over some of the sides who are having to cope with the Thursday, Sunday churn throughout the campaign. I know Newcastle are not one of those, they're in the Champions League, but that's going to be a big problem for some of the sides who aren't used to doing that. So I do think there is a clear opportunity for United, but they have to get the house in order, don't they? You know, they have to have a good start. They have to try and build on some of the stuff that we talked about off the pitch at the start of the show. So I don't think 6th is too far away. I mean, 6th, 7th, 8th, they get back into Europe in some form, you know, whatever happens in the cups, I think that's probably the target, isn't it, to be fair? That's much more pessimistic even than last season's set of predictions, but maybe a bit more optimistic than it would have been had we done that at the end of the game in Bilbao, which I won't mention again, Andy. But yeah, thank you very much. That's it then. The new season is here. Manchester United against Arsenal, just hours away, depending on when you're listening or watching this. But thank you for your company. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Laurie. Thank you, Carl. Remember, if you've not watched this on YouTube, there is our YouTube channel now. If you have watched it on YouTube, remember to like, remember to subscribe if you've not done already. Leave us a comment as well and click the bell so you never miss an episode. There's also our social media accounts. There's been lots on there this week, actually. Bit more planned over the coming weeks as well. A few more fun quizzes and things like that. People having a go at shirt association and other things, which has been a lot of fun. So check those out. Instagram, TikTok and X at TOT Devils. But for the moment, thank you for your company and we'll see you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thanks for watching the show. Don't forget to like, comment and subscribe, most importantly, and click that bell so you never miss an episode of Talking the Devils.